Hello, I'm Nikki Gemmell, author of On Quiet, talking big ideas, little books for Hachette Australia.
Nikki, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us. You're the author, I believe, of 15 books, which is extraordinary. I think 9 novels and 4 or 5 works of non-fiction. It's absolutely wonderful. You've been translated into over 22 languages. And of course, you have an extraordinarily popular column for The Australian. But I'm delighted to talk about On Quiet today. Now, when I was thinking about On Quiet, I thought, you are one of the most joyous, vivacious and generous people I know. Why did you choose to write On Quiet?
Well, maybe I'm craving quiet, Louise. I have another side to me. You know, I mean...
Oh, yes.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez said everyone has 3 lives, a public life, a private life and a secret life. And I feel like for me, my public life is what you say, very loud and out there. And
I didn't say very loud, I said joyous. No, I didn't. Anyway, go on.
But for me, I've learnt how to be because I'm actually very shy and I actually crave quiet. I crave simplicity and a distilling to my life because I can't function without quiet. And so my public persona is very different to my persona at home. And the little nest that I've created around me in order to function, to work, to create, to write, to be a mother, to do all those things. If I don't have quiet in my life, I become kind of spiritually unsettled. And that's not necessarily in a God sense, a religious sense. It's just kind of an agitation of the soul. So I need quiet. And I wanted to write about how you can possibly get quiet in your life.
And so with all of that, writing a column, weekly column, and the business of writing novels, non-fiction projects, and having a family, having a partner, how do you find quiet?
You have to cleave it, carve it out of your life. My darling partner, he knows when the world is swamping me, I become shouty mum. I become that woman that I've always dreaded turning into. I become my mother. I hear my mother in my voice. I take it out on my kids. And I hate it when I become like that. I'm swamped, I'm exhausted, there's too much noise in my life. I need the medicine of quiet. And my husband he senses it and he says, just go, just go. Just go and get a coffee, if that's possible. Sometimes he says, just go and write for several days, for a week, if you have to. And I go and immerse myself in this little cottage in the bush and there's no internet, which I think is very, very important. So I have a digital detox and I just replenish myself and I write. And I come back into the world cleansed. And I can't even bear to turn on the radio and hear, the jibber-jabber. Even the ABC, the jibber-jabber of the ABC. It's like, I just need to hold on to this stillness and this quiet because I find it an immensely replenishing creative experience to kind of void my life of noise whenever I can.
Because it's such a noisy world we inhabit, isn't it? The distractions are immense, aren't they? They're all pervasive. Yes. The phone, the internet, and the television, all of the devices alone, to navigate stillness or the capacity to think, the time or the space to think, very hard in our modern lives.
Oh, absolutely, with the 24-hour news cycle. Sometimes when I'm getting really agitated, I'm waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning to check on the latest Trump outrage or whatever it is, or, coronavirus, how many more cases in the world or whatever it is. And it's like my sleep is agitated, my world doesn't feel like it's completely dark and still at night anymore. I've got my phone next to my bed, my iPad not far away. I'm conscious of my kids, have they got their devices? Are they still awake, listening to their devices? I'm very conscious for them that they don't have enough boredom and enough quiet in their own lives, because from all those things, stillness, quiet, boredom, something magical unfolds, something magical unfurls. And I want that for my children as much as I want that for myself.
We used to say, people say to me, what is it about reading that you like? And I always felt to this day that reading is my form of quiet, that actually immersing yourself in a novel, whatever genre it is a way, it brings about, and I'm not a writer, I'm not a creative writer like you are, I don't have any of that talent, but just the act of reading is a quietening, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's a circuit breaker. And it transports you into another world. And I find, in a way, as our world gets noisier and noisier and busier and more crammed and more stressful, and our crammed hours leak further and further into our evenings as we bring our work home and we bring our emails and our texts home and all the rest of it, if I can somehow remove myself with a book and enter another world and say stop to everything else around me, it feels so replenishing and valuable.
So you talk about replenishment and the fulfilment of it, but you begin on quiet with this quote from Pascal: "All men's miseries derive from not being able to sit in a quiet room alone." So is a writing life a way of defeating life's miseries for you?
Absolutely. Writing is my medicine. And I've found throughout my life, I've been doing it for several decades now, I'm at my most agitated when I can't write. I think it's a particularly female thing too, because we have so many distractions, so many things tugging at us as women, as mothers, as wives, as sisters, as daughters, as granddaughters. We find it very hard to say no. We're constantly the pleasers. We're constantly told to do things for others, to be nice, to be meek, to be obedient. Edith Wharton talked about the curtain of niceness that befalls young women. And it's a problem for us because it can deplete us. We're giving to so many others. And I feel like part of finding quiet within our lives as women is learning the ability to say no. To say, actually, I want some time for myself. I need some time for myself, for my health, for my mental health, whatever. I need to pull back. I need to be a little bit selfish and say no sometimes to find the quietude, the spiritual solace in a way, which replenishes us.
I thought the book on quiet was beautiful because you're teasing out the writing, not just the thought, what it held in terms of ideas, but actually the craft of it. You're sort of, it's not a meander, it's a reflection on quiet and all sorts of ways in which quiet, we inhabit quiet or we prevent quiet from coming upon us, the kind of ways in which quiet is used. But one of the ways that, one of the aspects of it that worried me was you write about quietism. And as if it's a kind of stillness and a kind of letting go and being in the moment. And I thought there's a kind of passivity, I'm obviously talking about myself really. I wanted to say no, because that's a giving in. That's a kind of that's acceptance. And I don't know why you want to accept the world as it is rather than fight for a better world. So I wondered whether you would talk about quietism.
Well, yes, and I do talk about the dangers of quiet for women.
Correct.
As well, in the book.
As a noisy woman, I thought, this is not...
and I can be too.
Yes, but it's, the power of it.
Well, exactly, because I feel like women, forever, women have been silenced. We've been told we have to be meek and good and quiet and nice, pliant, accepting, all those words that silence us. And so there is a little bit in the book about, please no, because that means the men who fear us win if we're silent. So, that is in terms of quiet and our voices, the female voice. As a writer, I feel like I am constantly being told to be quiet, to stop saying that, to be silenced. And in a way, that kind of, it energizes me. It's like it gives me fuel for my fiction and my non-fiction. It's like, no, I will not be quiet.
I thought you were advocating, so I misunderstood.
No,
I thought you were advocating
not.
for quietism.
And I certainly feel those are two separate issues in terms of the quietness of a woman's voice please no. You know, we want our daughters to be loud and honest and to have the confidence to say what they want and what they don't want. I'm talking more about within ourselves, a quietness of the soul that frees us.
You say that men have their sheds, that's where they go for quiet, and women have their cars.
Yes!
Now, that struck me as interesting. And I thought about my car, which I like to keep fastidiously clean and really don't want anyone else in it, actually, right, because they'll just mess it up, right? And why is the car a place of quiet for women?
Oh, well, I feel like a car is a woman's shed. You know, a bloke can go down to the backyard, and go to his shed and muck about with his tools and all the rest of it. And for
But you're
us,
schlepping children backwards and forwards. You've got their crap in the boot and, all the stuff. Why is that a quiet place?
It's a tool for liberation and
because you can drive away from home.
Yes,
and leave the
freedom.
noisiness there.
But sometimes what I do is, I've driven the kids around all day. I've been the unpaid Uber driver, all the rest of it. We get home, I boot them out, all the sports gear and all the rest of it. And then I just, sit at the wheel outside the house. I may even, do the central locking so no one can get into me. And I just listen to the radio, or I listen to, the music or whatever it is, or I just read my phone, or sometimes I just close my eyes and calm in my little space of solace called the car. And also the car gets me wherever I want to go. Because for me, as a writer, particularly as a fiction writer, I love going places I've never been. That also is fuel for my fiction. And the car has enabled me to do that again and again and again. Just drive on roads that I don't know where they're going to lead me or what I'm going to discover along the way. That, to me, is a quietening that stills me down.
I don't know whether how you'll feel about this, but I was thinking about your mother and the book you wrote about your mother's death, and that was her choosing quiet, wasn't it?
You mean
Yes.
with
Yes.
euthanasia
Yes.
and committing
Yes.
suicide?
Yes.
Yes, it absolutely was.
And so, do you accept that? Because you write. I think it's a wonderful book, and about the pain that you felt about her choices.
Yeah.
So I wondered whether why not to accept her right, not just to final quiet, which is so obvious and cliched, but that she was seeking quiet, she was seeking not just an end, but quiet.
Yes. Louise, that's a really profound question, and I've never thought
I
of
know,
it like
I know.
that. No, it's the gift of a question. It's a gift to me because she was. And after I wrote that book, I wrote a column about it also. And the column that I wrote was, why? Why had she done this? I don't understand why she would take her life. And I got a letter from a woman who'd had postnatal depression. She was 30. She said she had tried to do what my mother had done with pills and alcohol. She just had a new baby. She tried to kill herself. She said her husband revived her. She was furious at him. But she said, Nikki, I'm sorry, I'm crying. She said, I just want you to understand why we get in this mind frame. We just want the pain to stop. We just want the pain to end. And when you say that, in terms of my mother, she wants quiet. She was so agitated and she was so swamped by everything, bewilderment and chronic pain and the thought of having to go into a nursing home, and the only way she could get control of her life was to do that. It was the only time to quieten everything, and it was a very peaceful death. The police told me that, the medics told me that. It was a very quiet way to go. And it's what she wanted. And I think...
So do you understand that now? Do you forgive her?
I do. Of course I do. I forgave her at the start because it's what she wanted.
Yes. No, but it's hard. One is very ambivalent about. You can forgive and understand, and yet it's one's mother and...
Yes, but I would also say in terms of that and quiet, it's about control.
Correct.
And so you feel like when you're at your most unquiet, when your life is noisiest and most agitated and swamping and you're drowning within it, you're not in control. And control,
And the
a lack of
car,
control
going
is
back to the
deeply-
thing, the car is completely at your control,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's a perfect
Yes,
metaphor for the...
Exactly. God, I feel like I should have rewritten this book.
No, you can write on quiet too.
Yes.
Consider yourself commissioned.
But it's so true about a lack of control is about
And
no
that's what the
quietness.
panic, that's what the agitation is that you're talking about in modern life, in everyday life, is one is agitated how to write. Writing in agitation doesn't deliver good writing, does it?
No.
You would say.
No, exactly. And that's like for me every Monday morning after the chaos of 4 kids, dog, husband, everything on the weekend. Before I sit down to write, they've all gone off to school, I suddenly have the house to myself. I have to have it perfectly clean and neat
Right.
before I can actually write, even if I'm upstairs in my study, but, there's disgusting mess everywhere else, I have to clean it up because I want to be a world perfectly ordered and quiet because that gives my brain quietness, which gives me expansiveness to write.
It's so interesting. So we've only got a few minutes left, but I want to ask you, about the public realm, and you say it's a very noisy realm and it's antithetical to writing well. And I was thinking about political leadership in this noisy 24/7 news cycle, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any place, do you think, for a quiet leader today, or is that just antithetical to the way public and discourse, political life is led, that one couldn't be a quiet leader today?
Yeah, it's so depressing to even think that. It's like the bombastic alphas, they're the ones who, who get through. I think there has to be a reckoning. We have to have a shift back to goodness and quietness. In terms of leadership, I think, I mention it in On Quiet, Jo Cox, the British politician who was killed, during the height of the Brexit fever. She was shot by a constituent and died, a young mother. It was terribly sad. She was a quiet leader. She served her community and she served it so well and so beautifully. She probably would never have risen to, the top of the Labor Party because, perhaps she didn't have the loudness necessary for that. But that, to me, how she served her people, that's a true leader. And I just have to hope that there will be a great reckoning, the tide will swing towards quiet leadership somehow for the sake of the world.
Because it seems not there when you think of our political culture, you think of the US, the UK, all about noise and static and, empty noise, vacuous noise.
I know. I would say Merkel and Ardern in New Zealand and possibly Theresa May, they had a different style of leadership and it was quieter than the blokes.
That iconic moment where Jacinda Ardern hugs the woman in grief at the Christchurch. I mean, that's a quiet moment, isn't it, actually?
Yes. They do what they need to do in a quieter way.
And so potent, so powerful.
I know.
Okay, my last question is, you say that aloneness is a restorative gift from others.
Yes.
It goes right back to the beginning and you say, in order to be myself, I need to be quiet. So it's not loneliness though, is it?
Oh gosh, no. No. I never feel loneliness within aloneness. I mean, I'm my true self in solitude. And I feel lucky that I have that I'm comfortable being like that. I must admit, for all the terrible things with the coronavirus, it's like, oh my goodness, it suits someone like me so well.
That's antisocial. And really, actually, behind the noisy facade is a social isolate.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I've got an excuse now to just stay at home and no, I can't go out. And to have a really quiet life and all the rest of it. Yeah, so for me, it allows me, quietness allows me to nest within the realm of my family. And
It's the writing. Let's finish on the writing because it's the writing. I mean, the family, of course it matters, but it's actually the work that this is about, is finding space and creating space in which you can think about the work you want to write. And that's the point of this, isn't it?
Yes.
We always lead noisy, busy lives, but how do you find, if you want to write well, that's not done, you know.
I can't work and I can't write if my world is too noisy and stressful and uncertain and demanding and agitating. I need that spiritual solace of the quietude to do that.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I love that you're saying this radiant and full of life and that you need solitude. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.